important that when you bring things together, the power of the group is often much more powerful than the power of the individuals within that group, and I'm very conscious of that here today. We also have two very powerful, influential people joining us in a few moments' time, and we'll guide their chat. As John Purcell, the CEO of Casey Law, is always telling me, it's my job to say as little as possible over the next half hour or so, and I'm sure with our two guests that will be a task that's very, I got a thumbs up from the boss there already, I'm on to it. So hopefully that will be a very, very easy task for you. But I'd love you guys to get involved as well, and maybe at some point during the chats, if you've got a question, just shout. It's not like school, you don't have to ask permission. I'll come down to you, there's plenty of microphones coming around, and we'll get through it. But more importantly, to get on to our two guests. Two fabulous guests with connections, as we heard on Casey Law this morning, to Carlow, to the Chamber. The first gentleman has connections that are so obvious. His parents are here today as well. Miriam, where are your parents? Just so I can put them there. Thank you very much. I should treat him tenderly, unlike all of the opponents that he played against on the rugby pitch over those years. But international rugby star, local man, local legend. He might even give us a bit of an insight into a new thing that he's going to be involved in, and I'd like to welcome to the stage, give a big round of applause please for our first guest, Jackman. When I saw Bernard standing up with a bottle in hand, I was quite excited. I'm a little bit disappointed to see that it's only water, but there you go. Our second guest joining us is somebody who, for me, for many of us in the broadcast industry, is an icon, not just because of what she does on screen and on air, but because of how she's perceived by people like me within the industry. She's somebody who, despite how hard I digged, I could have nothing but people saying good things about her all week long. So it could be quite a boring chat, but I'm sure it won't be. When you get to a certain stage in your career, I think there's one mark of success. Some women have achieved it. Beyonce, Diana, for example. To become known by one name, you know you've made it. Please give a big round of applause to Miriam. We'll take off with us. We're talking about new directions and embracing new directions, and we'll get into that in a moment. I mean, it's a very new direction for me to be in the seat, to be able to interview Miriam and Bernard. I mean, that's quite a new thing. But thank you very much for coming. Miriam, a special thanks to you, because I believe you brought something particularly special with you. You're going to be giving away 2 tickets to the toy show this evening.
If only, Brian. First of all, thanks a million. I'm so impressed in that word is that your show is 3 hours live radio every day. That is a remarkable achievement. So congrats to you. Thanks for interviewing us today.
Well, like I said, I'll be trying to say as little as possible from now on. Bernard, great to have you with us as well. Embracing and challenges and taking new directions is something that's the theme of what we're going to talk about today. But embracing new challenges, I mean, it must be something that was quite common within your career. What was the biggest challenge that somebody ever asked you to take on, the biggest thing you ever had to embrace as something that you didn't feel comfortable with?
I'm not sure if I felt comfortable with it, but I was quite lucky. I started off my career as an amateur, rugby professional when I was 20. The Irish didn't want to go professional, they actually voted against it, but World Rugby passed it. So Warren Gatland gave me a contract to play for Connacht. I was supposed to go to Japan. I was studying international marketing in Japanese. My dad's a cattle dealer, and I convinced my father, I was working my wife in Dublin for 4 years to study international marketing Japanese. And he said to me, what the hell am I going to do with that? And I said, I'm going to sell beef to Japanese for you. So I think we went from being cattle dealers to Larry Goodman-esque in terms of if I hadn't got there. But I suppose the most embarrassing thing that I've ever had to do, it's just a story. So Warren Gatland picked me to go to tour to South Africa with Ireland in 1997. And we had a meeting the first night in a hotel in Cape Town, and we talked about the tour, the opportunity, the logistics, etc. And they talked about standards and the fines, etc. And then he said, look, when I played for, Warren Gatland played for the All Blacks and the New Zealand Maoris. So when I played for the All Blacks and New Zealand Maoris, we played against the Irish, the Welsh, the English, and the Scots. We used to laugh how white and pasty and unathletic looking you were, right? So you took out a bottle like this with cream liquid in it. He said, look, this is fake tan, he said, right? He said, Jackman and Trevor Brennan, you're the two palest. You're going to try this tonight. And if it works for you, the whole team are going to wear it on Saturday, right? So we go up to the room anyway, and I thought we just do our forearms, our quads, our face, a lot of face obviously, and that'll be fine. And Trevor goes, no, we're going to Camps Bay each Thursday. We have to do the full body, right? So quite quickly, he was in his white front, so I was in a pair of boxer shorts, and he's putting on me and I'm putting on him, right? So this was 1998, okay, fake tan has come a long way. I have a 19-year-old daughter. I know a lot more about it now than I did then. But of course, we put on a full layer and nothing happened, okay? So Trevor goes, we put another layer on, right? So Trevor Brennan was a milkman before he became fresh room player, but he should have been a plaster, right? Like he was putting it on very heavy, I was putting it on him. And again, nothing happened. So Trevor goes, one more for a look, okay? So anyway, again, nothing happened. So we went to bed saying, oh, Captain's giving us moisturiser. He's going to come in and he's going to lap us in the morning how white we are. So about 3 o'clock in the morning, I wake up and it was like I had diarrhea in the bed, right? So I just shouted at Trevor, and all you see were the whites of his eyes, right? So the two of us get in the shower together trying to get it off, but it doesn't come off. So next morning I have to walk down to into the tea room for breakfast. Do you know an up from Charlie Chocolate Factory? Right? So Trevor Brennan looks like that. You know those bodybuilders with spray tan? I look like one of those without the body. So that was the biggest challenge I had on a rugby field, and unfortunately, but look, I think I was so lucky, and it's not just in sport. You have to try and have fun. There's times when you have to work very hard, but you have to try and have times where you can have a bit of crack and make some memories as well. So no more fake tan. I leave that to Miriam.
That's such a good story.
Well, if there's any future ranks in the business, in the building who are looking for a new ambassador, maybe that might be good. Miriam, you've had a little beauty story recently as well. I haven't intended to go there.
My eyelashes.
Oh my God.
Well, actually, that's such a good story. But actually, before I took my eye makeup, I have got a funny story. I think it's quite funny. Not as funny as that, but it's in my book, by the way. I'm not joking. So years ago, I was in Connemara, and I was with my husband. We were driving along a country road, and suddenly I saw a sheep lying at the side of the road. Now this is a mad story, but it's a funny story. So I said to Steve, Jesus, we have to stop and see if that sheep is okay, because I could see my husband and he's going, are you for real? It was like 1995, this is 30 years ago. He barely knew. I said, no, we have to help this wounded sheep. I could see him looking at me thinking, she's mental. So we pulled up and we backed up in a very narrow road, and the sheep was wounded. Now he was, he'd been hit by a car, so I obviously thought, I need to help this sheep. So I decided I love digestive biscuits, and the only thing I had in the car were a packet of digestive biscuits. So I could see my husband be looking at me thinking she's totally insane. So I took out some digestive biscuits, and I went out to the sheep and I put the digestive biscuits on the ground in front of the sheep. Okay. I could see my husband going, really? Then the next thing, a Garda car came along. This is a tiny road in Connemara. And like the song, she stopped all the cars with one wave of her hand. I dived out the middle of the road to stop the Garda car. They halted thinking, oh my God, something terrible has obviously happened. So when they stopped, they got out of the car. I was only on RT a very short time, but they clocked me. I said, I'm really sorry, guard. I said, but this sheep is wounded. You can see them looking at me thinking, she's a nutcase. And then they saw the digestives. And then they looked at me, and then they looked at my husband, and I said, we need a vet. And they're going, she's bonkers. So eventually, I got the number of a vet, and I got the vet. And the vet came along. So there's two Gardaí, the vet, my husband, and me, the sheep, and the digestives. And the vet was looking at me, and I could see them all thinking, your one of RTE is a total fruitcake. But they were all really nice to me. But the other day, this guy phoned up my daughter, Alana, my eldest girl, and he's a solicitor down in Connemara. And he said, Alana, I have to tell you, I just heard about that story, and my dad was that vet. And every time Miriam O'Callaghan comes on the telly, he goes, she gave digestives to a sheep. And asked me to come out and mind that sheep. Anyway, just to say, The sheep made it, he minded the sheep, but he never ever had the digestive it.
We're only 5 minutes in, we've already got that Miriam's offers prepared. It's quite an interesting conversation. But let's get into that idea of taking and embracing challenges. I mean, the challenge of getting a sheep to eat digestive biscuits may be one that shouldn't have been taken on. But Miriam, you've recently written that book. You would have had an opportunity. We joked earlier on that certain people, are only in the door, they're already writing autobiographies. You waited until now. Was that because you saw it as a challenge, or you just didn't think the timing was right until now?
Yeah, it's a good question, because you do see people writing their books in their 20s. They're like volume 8. I'm never writing another volume, by the way. And no, the Penguin, who are nice publishers, came to me 20 years ago and said, would you write a story? I think everyone remains that insecure 16-year-old. You go, really? When I didn't bother reading it. And then, to be honest, Brian, I couldn't work out how you could write a story of your life that was truthful, that you wouldn't upset anyone.
Yeah. And
I famously have 8 children, which I'm so proud of, and it's my biggest success that they are happy, healthy young adults. But as I thought, I'm never going to write it because I'm never going to be able to write it and not upset anybody. And I was never going to write a book that would throw a grenade into someone's life. But eventually, the nice woman in Penguin psyched up me. I present the book awards every year, this huge big cake. She said, oh, Miriam, if not now, when? So I did get up the following morning and start to write it. You know what I'm happy about, Brian? Everyone in my life, people from the past, the present, they're all happy with it. So I upset no one, so I'm happy with that.
But did the idea of doing it scare you?
Jeez, that's a good question. I think it obviously did, because it took me 20 years to get around to doing it. But no, when I wrote it in the end, I think if you're just truthful in your life, I just sat down and I wrote the story and I wrote about my life. And I suppose the only bit I found difficult was I had a beautiful sister called Anne O'Callaghan, and we were born a year apart. I always get upset about it, but I won't. And I'm very close to all my siblings, but we were particularly close at this time because we were born a year apart, and in the early 90s she had 2 tiny little girls and I had 4 little girls. So we used to hang out together all the time, and we were very, very close. And then one day we were sitting on the steps of my house, and she was 33 at the time, I was 34. And she said she didn't feel well. And I actually didn't take it very seriously, because you know yourself, we were knackered from all babies, like we were so tired. But 5 months later, Brian, she died of stomach cancer. Yeah. And she left behind a 2- and 4-year-old little girl, and a gorgeous husband, and my mom and dad were broken hearted. My dad was walking out the gate of her house 8 weeks later to get her mass card printed, her memorial card, and he dropped dead in the garden. And I remember thinking in that moment how unfair life is. So I found writing about the death of Anne and my dad quite tricky.
When you think about Anne, or you write about her,
yeah,
it's obviously difficult. But there must be parts of Anne that you still carry with you today that have shaped you. I mean, that idea of embracing loss and accepting loss, I don't want to bring it down to the challenges that we face within the business community.
Yeah.
But if there's anything that you could take from that part of your life that you think others could learn from, would it be that to embrace life?
Yeah, 100%. I'm sure there are people in this room who've lost people, and it's always devastating. But I think when you're someone who's that young, do you know what it did, Brian? It made me realise, I call it my BC and my AD, that life is just unfair, but you should embrace it. I literally never worry about anything. I'm the most annoying person, my husband will agree with this. I never worry about anything. Why? Because it doesn't matter. This is our only life. Stop worrying, live it, love it. Because some people have their lives stolen from them so young. And so my advice and what I got from Anne's premature death is, live your life, love it. You only have one life. This is it. Don't worry. Be kind to people. I always say that to my children. And life will give it to you back in spades, usually.
Thanks for sharing that. Obviously, life can often throw up challenges, Bernard. I mean, the challenges that you faced in your life, both on the field and off the field, I'm sure we've all got stories to share like that. But that connection to people people. Sometimes we're willing to, march into fire as a result of the connections that we built up in life. Probably the biggest challenge that you faced in your sports career, maybe it was in the years where you stepped off the playing pitch and were involved in management. Tell us why you stepped into Welsh rugby for the years that you did, considering that, as Bushy Langan, our sports head, Casey or described Welsh rugby at that time was maybe a shit show, excuse the language, but you were willing to step forward. Was that because of the relationship that you had with Warren, and when a friend came calling, even though you knew it was going to be difficult, you were willing to make that move?
Yeah, I think any of the good experiences or good memories I've had has been work with people that I like and trust and hopefully respect and trust me. And as I said, Warren Jackman gave me my first ever contract. And then he went on to have a great career, coaching Ireland, coaching Wales, coaching Wasps, coaching British Irish Lions. So he was the head coach of Wales. We spent 6 years in France in Grenoble in the top 14. We decided we were coming home, we wanted our kids to be Irish and be close to grandparents, etc. So we made plans to come back to Dublin. And then he rang me and said, look, there's a job going in the Dragons and I want you to go for it. So I went over and met him and he said, look, there's going to be no money, it's a pretty big prospect, but hopefully in time there'll be more investment and I think you'll be the right guy for it and I want you to work kind of under me to a certain extent. It was the only region that was owned by the WRU. Now in fairness, 6 months in he said to me, the money's not coming. I misunderstood or miscalculated the desire the union had to invest, and I'm after giving you a hospital pass basically. I have to put you in a place that's not going to be good for your career. But if you want to stay, I'll continue to work with you, but we're not going to get any massive upside. So I'm going to stay there until Captain finished, and then I came home and got a real job. I got a 9-to-5 job for 4 years. Worked with Reuters, selling market data, and worked with a company called Gartner, selling IT research. But I started to do media, punditry and speaking, and eventually I was lucky enough to get enough work elsewhere that I gave up to 9-to-5 and just went freelance. But
that was pretty challenging for you. Sorry to interrupt you, but I want to stay with that point for a moment, because did that feel like failure?
Yeah, it was definitely failure. Yeah. Well, I've been used to failing. I think if you want to do something that's anyway different or decent, you got to be able to embrace losing, not getting selected, not getting the contract you want, etc. Understand why and then try to get better. So when I retired in 2010, I've been lucky. I've been in teams that won things, so I won a European Cup, Grand Slam, Challenge Cup, etc. But I've been in teams who were talented and won. I've been in teams who were talented and lost. Teams with very little talent and won. So the culture decides everything. So when I retired in 2010, I went back and did a master's in UCD, but again, I didn't want to spend 3 months in the library, so I went traveling the world. So my thesis was on the correlation between high-performing behaviours in elite sport and business teams. So I went traveling, I went to the All Blacks, I went to Sydney Swans, I went to Melbourne Storm, I went to Toyota in Japan, I went to Amazon in Seattle, Google in San Francisco, the IMG Tennis Academy, Just Eat in London, we're a startup. They sell takeaways now. I had a big role in their success, not as a consultant, as a customer, unfortunately. I'm still giving them a few bob every month. I went to Dyson, I went to Man United, I went to Rolex, but just, you talk about resilience. The best story I have for resilience, unfortunately, is not me, but it's a guy called James Dyson. So James Dyson is one of the richest men in the UK. He's worth 20 billion. He just bought a farm in Waterford, I think, for 8 million. But his story is interesting. So he's famous for making the Hoovers, and now hair dryers, not that I need one of those, but Hoovers and hair dryers and a few other things. But his dad was a classics teacher in a posh school in England. I think it was about £30,000 to go there as a student. He was never going to go there because the parents couldn't afford it. But his dad died when James was 13, so him and his younger brother got a scholarship to the school because his dad was in active service when he passed away. So they went to the school they never wanted to go to, and they got bullied horrifically. Because they weren't from money and his father had been a teacher there. So James and his brother, they threw their efforts into their studies. James got a scholarship to a top class university for an engineering degree, got a first class honours, and then went working for a company who made craft and technology for the marine industry. And quite early he had success. He designed a craft to take boats out of water. He got a patent for it, okay? So he had success, the star was rising. But he kept saying to his wife, I think I can make a Hoover that's going to be better than every other Hoover. And she said, go speak to the boss. So he went to speak to the CEO and said, I have an idea. And they said, James, we make craft and machinery for marine, the water industry. Stay in your lane. So he went back to his wife and she said, let's just do it ourselves. So he took a settlement, a small bit of money, and in his back garden shed he set about trying to create the first prototype for the Hoover that made him famous. So after 4 months his wife had to get a second job. Okay? After 7 months they remortgaged her house. After 11 months her parents remortgaged her house. After 14 months his parents remortgaged her house. Never got a bank loan, never looked to share the risk, never sold equity. And after 17 months he designed the first prototype that led to manufacturing. Just in your mind, think about how many attempts he had. Okay, he had 5,126 failures before 5,127 was the right one. Right. So I said to him, so I spent 4 days with him. I said, "How did you keep going? Why didn't you spread the risk? Why didn't you get a bank loan?" And he said, "I believed I could do it, and as long as I only changed one part of the process each time, and I didn't double back on myself. Every time I failed, it was actually a gift because it meant I was getting one step closer." And I think in elite sport, elite business, politics, in the arts, in the media world, unfortunately failing is part of it. But the review process, and probably just from a sports person, like you get feedback 4 times between a Saturday and a Monday evening, right? So you miss a tackle, you know yourself, okay? Then you hear it groan from the crowd, that's 2. You open a Sunday paper and you look at your player rating, 5 out of 10. If you're lucky, that's 3, okay? And then on a Monday morning when you go into the team environment, and as coaches, they show you the missed tackle. So I suppose, and then this is elite level. This is people who are not bad at what they do. And again, I think that from a sporting point of view, that shows you the importance of getting that feedback, the importance of maybe having mistakes, as long as you can take it on board and try and make sure you're better the following Saturday.
You should be on the radio. We get feedback hundreds of times an hour. Text and WhatsApp machines 083 can often be the sources of great information and also blame your life sometimes. Miriam, a phrase that Brian used there when he was talking was "stay in your lane." You started off as a solicitor. I think you worked in the UK before coming back to Ireland and making Prime Time your own. They've got a big anniversary coming up next year as well, I think, haven't they? 30th it is, yeah. I was hoping, but you should know that, so yeah, 30 years. You're also the only female broadcaster ever to host a full edition of The Late Late Show. I know Marion Finucane did a segment or part of the show before you. Has anybody ever told you to stay in your lane?
Not really, actually, but I was fascinated listening because I think you must learn so much, Bernard, from elite sport to play at your level is remarkable. Not really. I mean, my mother's amazing. My mother's 97. She still lives in the house we grew up in. She lives independently, which is pretty remarkable. But she keeps saying to me, Miriam, I did law in UCD and became a solicitor. Now, I haven't had a bad career, Brian. She goes, you could always go back to being a solicitor. I'm going, really?
Get a proper job.
Get a proper job. No, I don't understand. Staying in my lane, I don't really know what that means. But
Again, without going down the route of talking from a sexist perception, as a woman growing up in the media in an organisation that was very male-dominated at the time, you had aspirations, I'm sure. You talked about being nice. But how do you sustain a career like that without being told at some point, particularly as a woman, to stay in your lane?
I don't know. I know people have had bad experiences. I've only had good experiences with my bosses. Most of them have been male, actually going through my life. And I've only had great experience. I had a beautiful, caring father, I have a fab brother, a lovely husband, and 4 lovely sons. So I know people have had different experiences, but I have to be honest and say, I've only had brilliant male bosses. And along the way, I've honestly never had anyone who wasn't decent to me, Brian. And I have another thing to say, which is that Seamus Heaney, the great poet, gave me 2 words of advice once, which I use all the time in my life, which is that most people mean well and give people slack if they're being a bit tricky because you never know what's going on in someone's life. But the 2 words Seamus gave me, and I use them every day of my life, probably used it last night in prime time, is if anyone's ever being a little bit tricky with you in life, treat them with implacable courtesy. And they're 2 simple words, and people get so deflated if they're being tricky to you if you kind of are really nice back. So if they even did have a couple of times a tricky boss, I would always be so decent to them back that they would literally recoil probably and say, shit, I'm being a bit of a shit here. I would be nice to her now. So it's worked for me, and I also don't think it's a great secret to success. I do think it's what I said about my sister's death. You can be unlucky in life, but a lot of time, there's no secret to success, like Bernard, I'm sure is the same, or you are. It's hard work. If you work hard, really, really hard in your life, I'm only as talented as 99.9% of the people in the country, but I've always worked really hard, and I've always tried to be decent to people. So I don't think that, I always think life's quite simple. You know, just work hard, be nice, and everything else will work fine.
The book is out.
Bernard's book?
No,
Yours is written now.
Yeah, yours is coming out, yeah.
What I was going to say was the book is out, but Bernard, you've got something new planned, I believe, coming quite soon. A new direction. I mean, when I was looking at some of the briefs that Nicola had sent me on, I felt like it was...
He's going into the tanning world.
Well, that'll be answered. I've just been announced as the key sponsors for this year's Dancing with the Stars. Maybe, you know, your own hand brand might take over for them next year. But tell us as much as you possibly can about what is coming. And also, consider we're talking about empowering people and considering new directions in life. Why that direction now when you've still got so much going on besides that?
Look, I think I've been incredibly lucky that rugby has given me so much, still does. I'm lucky enough to have Colin, Sun Independent, work for RT, work for Premier Sport, and I love the game, I'm very passionate about it, but I suppose also, I was lucky enough to travel the world through rugby, so I played in England, Manchester, coached in France, coached in Wales, toured Fiji, Japan, Australia, so I used rugby as my passport to travel. And a lot of it was because I had good connections. So Brendan Pope was my first coach in Clontarf, Warren Gaffin, Eddie O'Sullivan, etc. So, but there's players who maybe are playing for Tullow or Carlow or Enniscorthy or Wexford Wanderers who don't have that network, but would love to use rugby to travel either as a player or a coach. So we've created a platform called Rugby Connector, and effectively we've got over 1,000 clubs who've signed up all over the world, some in Hong Kong, Singapore, Copenhagen. Every day there's more clubs joining, and we've got 4,000 players at the moment on the platform. And the idea is that they can effectively just put an advert out there and say, look, we love tight head prop, we love a winger, or we just new players welcome. So there's a lot of Irish young men and women now heading to Australia for gap years.
It's like a dating app for rugby players.
Yeah, it's like Tinder, right? For rugby players. But all we do is connect them. We don't vet them. Like, it's up to the clubs to do their own research. But hopefully, what it is, it's not professional contracts. It's hopefully a young boy or girl wants to go to Chicago for a summer, and when they get there, there's someone from a club who collects them at the airport, puts them up for the first couple of nights, helps them find a job, and they use rugby as a way of creating good experiences, memories, have fun. And we're rugby actually are interested in buying it off us, even that wasn't the plan, because
they haven't even launched it,
yeah,
we sold it.
We might have sold it, hopefully, but they definitely want to buy it because effectively there's a lot of kids dropping out of the sport earlier and earlier, and effectively there's a lot of kids who have dreams to be professional, and then when they get to 20 and they realise, oh, I'm not going to be a professional player, then they get disheartened and they give it up. Whereas if they could see that was a passport to get a job in London or to get a chance to live in Auckland, etc., they may stay playing, and obviously the health benefits, the social benefits of that is something that I think where rugby knows is something that they could help with. And we're just we're not going to get rich from this, unfortunately, but I think it's a good thing to give back.
I'm going to do a little bit of radio stuff now. I'm going to forward sell in a few moments' time. We're going to be getting opportunities for you guys to ask some questions, so do start thinking. But Bernard, the fear is obviously something you've experienced, probably physical, when you look at somebody on the opposing team thinking, oh really? Oh no, wondering.
Mind you, they're probably thinking that looking at him.
That's true. And then fear is something we all experience, whether it's fear of what life might bring or fear of what business might bring. That can often lead to us maybe not taking steps that our gut is encouraging us to take. What would you say to people about embracing fear and dealing with the challenge that experiencing fear presents?
I think if you're passionate about why you want to do it, I think that will help you overcome the fear. I think it's very hard to knock it. Even if you do a lot of public speaking or do TV, you still get those nerves before you go on air. And I think probably the day you don't get them, it's probably the day maybe you're not going to be as good as you were. But it's understanding why. And probably, I'm sorry to keep dropping other people's names here, but the best person I ever spent time with who understood the value of why. It was Sir Alex Ferguson, so I don't know any United fans here.
Oh yeah, it's one here, you can talk about all you want.
Yeah, so we're obviously not going very well at the moment, but in 2010 when I went travelling, I went to United and I had 4 days with Alex Ferguson, and I was shocked. So in 2009 we won a European Cup with Leinster in a Grand Slam. 12 months before we won those trophies, we got in a hotel, in a business conference room, we looked each other in the eye and said, this is going to be the most important thing in our lives for the next 12 months. Do we all agree? Right? And we did, and we ended up getting success. A month after we got the trophies, we went back to different hotel rooms and had the same conversation. But once we tasted success, we weren't the same animals. We weren't bad, we kept second in the Six Nations, we got beaten in the semi-final in Europe, but basically our hunger, our thirst had been sated. And I was watching this United team, he'd been there 22 years at this stage, okay? And when I watched them train, when I watched them in meetings, when I watched them in the gym, if you didn't know what they won, you said they'd never won anything. They were absolute dogs of how hard they worked. How they pushed each other, some of the stuff would get you in trouble with HR. You know, they overstepped the mark. But they were able to say it on the pitch, say it in the meeting, say it in the gym, and it didn't filter back into the team room or into the cars or at night. They were able to understand that Roy Keane is giving you feedback. It's not because he doesn't like you, it's because he wants to win on Saturday together. So I asked Ferguson when I asked him, how do you motivate these people of everything? And he told a story, he said, I tell the same story every year, the first day of pre-season. I've told it for the last 22 years, and I'm going to tell it until the day I leave, which was 3 years later. So Alex Ferguson grew up in a tough part of Glasgow, a place called Govan, okay? And back then, Glasgow and Belfast were big shipbuilding hubs, okay? But not anymore because of the cost of living, so obviously Belfast, harder than Wolf. So Alex Ferguson's father was a docker, and if Alex Ferguson had been a footballer, he would have been working in the shipbuilding industry. So he said he was about 14 years of age, having dinner one night, and his father said, Alex, I was coming home from work today and I walked past the building site. And I went in, there was 3 men building a wall. I said, the first man, what do you do? He said, I'm a bricklayer. He said, the second man, what do you do? He said, I'm earning £6 a month. He said, the third man, what do you do? He said, I'm building a building in 50 years' time. My son and my daughter will bring my grandson and my granddaughter and say, your grandfather built that. In this room, there's 22 professional soccer players, because that's what we used to keep, like the bricklayer. Somebody earned 10,000 a week, like the bricklayer earned £6 a month, men are making 300,000 a week. But some of you will come back to Old Trafford, or your sons or daughters will come back to Old Trafford in 50 years' time with your grandchildren or your kids, and there'll be a myriad outside of you. Or as they walk the corridors, there'll be photographs of your success. Or at half time, they'll play a montage on the big screen of your team winning trophies, and the people in the crowd will get that feeling we get when someone belonged to us does something special. And he said he wanted people in that dressing room who could see that. Right? So again, like what's your why? Like, what are you doing? Why are you working? Why are you involved in this club? Why are you involved in the chamber? Why are you spending your Friday here? Like what do you want to build for you or your family? That in 30, 40 years time, if you're looking to be alive, you look back and say, yeah, I achieved that, and that set the example, or that means that the next generation don't have to do that. So for me, all the hassle you get with doing things, if you understand and the fear, if you understand why it's important, you have a far better chance of actually finishing off.
Yeah. Just before we go for questions then, something that Miriam said earlier on connected to a comment that you made a moment ago when you said getting those people in the room and saying that the next 12 months this is the most important thing, giving up everything to strive for that goal, and talking about the why. And yet Miriam talked earlier on about the most important people in her life being those 8 children. Yeah. Miriam, how would you suggest that we balance that striving for the common good, you know, for the why of creating something for the future, but yet still being mindful of they're only babies for a number of years?
Yeah, but probably like I know you two and you too. I mean, look, I always think it's 24 hours in a day. It's 365 days a year. We've loads of time. So there's time to do everything.
I love how relaxed she is. They're grand, we've loads of time.
But I don't do worry. I don't see the point in it. So people used to say to me, you know, how do you, like if I had a cent for every time someone comes up and says, do you really have 8 children? I go, yeah, I do. No, but did you have them yourself?
Yeah, just borrowed them off somebody else.
Yeah, they came out of this wreck body, yeah, they did. And then they go, but how do you still work? And apart from the fact that I have had amazing childcare all my life, which I'm happy to invest in and believe it's so important. But like, there's loads of times, 24 hours in a day, I've plenty of time to love my children. They've grown up happy, the youngest fella's 19, they're delighted now to have a career of my own, and I just think it goes back to hard work, and also having a positive attitude in life. Yeah. Wake up every day grateful that you are alive, and obviously some people are dealing with ill health, or or, you know, a tragedy. I get that. They're bad days. But by and large, get up. I wake up every day relentlessly happy and drive my family insane. I used to say to all my children, look, you have 2 arms, 2 legs, so much so that they decided one day, all the kids, it'd nearly be worth losing an arm. Just so she can't say you have 2 arms and 2 legs. But I just think, you know, be grateful for your life. It's a wonderful life. The chances that any of us were born, it's so remote, it's infinitesimal. We're here, we get to live, we're alive. Enjoy it, live it to the full. You can have 8 kids and you can have your career and you can be decent and have a lovely life.
Stick around in time, guys. I'm going to go and join the rest of our guests because I know there's a couple of microphones roaming around the place, but I always find it's a lot more welcoming to walk out and about and see who may have questions. Anybody who's got questions, just shout them away or throw something at me. And if you'd like to introduce yourself to our guests and then start with the question, we'll hopefully get a response.
Thanks, Brian. Is it work to live or live to work?
Work to live or live to work?
Oh, well, obviously not live to work, because every time you read anything about people who are on their deathbed, they often say, oh, I wish I hadn't worked as hard. I would go back to say, you know, obviously, you don't live to work, because that's wrong. But I also don't work to live, because work makes it sound like you only work to live, whilst I, you know, look, my family, as everyone else in this room does. So I'm really not mad about that saying. You know, I think it's interesting, but I think you can work and love and party and chat and gossip and be here today, and you can do all of that and live. That's what I think.
Brendan, it's important to love living, maybe might be a more encompassing way of approaching it.
Yeah, I think try and find something that you're passionate about and that make that your work. And the days of, like I've had so many different careers already, you know, and you just gotta keep trying to find a way to challenge yourself, make it interesting, and finding people that you enjoy working with. Then it won't feel like work. So yeah, but it's not easy. I know a lot of people are stuck in careers that maybe they're not as passionate about right now. But again, how can you affect the environment? How can you understand people better? There's a quick story about enjoying work and connecting. Connacht in 2016 won the Pro 14, which would be like the Iron Islands win the World Cup. Like it's a massive achievement in terms of resources. Like they didn't have the budget. They had, I think, 40% of the budget of Leinster when they beat the final. But it was Pat Lamb's last season with Connacht. He spent 2 years there, and everybody thinks that rugby players and GA players and soccer players, they all know each other really well because they spend a lot of time together. In actual fact, it's the same as most other jobs where you hang around the same people every day. So there's cliques within teams. So Pat Lamb decided that they needed to work on their connection. So he asked every player and every member of staff to make a PowerPoint in the pre-season. Okay, minimum 3 slides, no maximum. And the topics were your 3 H's: your hero, your highlight, and your hardship. Okay, so players. Everybody had to give, by the following Friday, had to give their USB key to the video analyst because he runs the slide deck for every meeting. And Pat Lamb said, if we care about who we are, we care about who I am, as in who each individual is. And this is going to give us a chance to learn a little bit more. And what they did was they put every name in a wheel of fortune, which you can get online, and each meeting that they start or finish with, who am I, who are we, and you press the button and the wheel will spin. Okay? So you can imagine if your name is on that, you don't want your name to come up because you have to get up sure. You have to be vulnerable, right? So and if your name didn't come off then, you knew it wasn't you that day and someone else had to get up. But the first 6 were really generic, okay? My highlight was my first contract, my hero was Muhammad Ali, whatever. The 7th person was a guy called Bundy Aki, who now plays for Ireland, legend in Connacht. And Bundy Aki had been there a year and a half at this stage. And the players used to slag him saying he was a scat, but he was tight. Because when he was renegotiating his contract, he would fight to the very end to get the last euro. If there's an endorsement deal, he would knock people out of the way to get the endorsement deal, right?
And he's good at knocking people out of the way.
He's brilliant, right? But Bundy was quite reserved, quite closed, and the players didn't really understand him. But they just thought he was here to make money, and he's a great player on the field, but he doesn't care about Connacht or us. So when Bundy was the 7th person to come out of this, and Bundy never tried to explain why he was the way he was. And the last straw was the week before Bundy got up. I think he got paid on a Thursday. On a Friday morning, Bundy was the last of the photograph coming out of the Western Union in Ayr Square. He was obviously transferring money home, whatever. And someone took a photograph and put it in a WhatsApp group, and they said, "For fuck's sake, Bundy, could you not leave the money in the country for a few days, right?" And he never said, "No, let me tell you why I'm doing it." He didn't say a word. So when he gets up to give a speech, or to do his 3 H's, I can't remember who his hero was, what his hardship was, but his highlight was a video from Facebook of his nieces and nephews in his island in Samoa going into that Western Union, collecting the few bob he sent, and go and do their shopping. Because in Pacific Island society, like in Ireland, but we look after our immediate family very well, I think, Irish people do, and people who have emigrated often send back money. But in Pacific Island society, Fijians, Samoans, Tongans, New Caledonians, Cook Islanders, if one person does well, your uncles, your aunties, your nieces, nephews, your second, third cousins do well. So the highlight for him was seeing people belong to him, belong to his family, get the few bob, right? And players, he never would have shared that, right? When he thought there was an effort from Pat Lam to create that environment. Suddenly players who've gone before, or set a PowerPoint in, asked could they change it, right? So people wanted to, it's called psychological safety, where people feel comfortable in each other. People wanted to actually connect more. And it wasn't just the presentation, it was a conversation that happened afterwards. So I would be shocked if the teams you work with, there's people that are misunderstood, there's people that you've made an opinion on, and maybe don't like as much as you could because you don't actually understand where they're coming from. And it was just a small trick, and we've used it with business teams now, the 3 H's, that it opens up conversations to connect. And if you're working with people that you connect with, it doesn't feel like work as much.
Nicola Gordon's around as well, so I think he's got questions.
By the way, my first question.
Well, it opened up conversation, like the 3 H's does, it opens up conversation. Miriam, Paul Duke.
Well done, guys, fantastic. Miriam, just a simple question, because obviously you're a free spirit in life, and I love that, but I don't often watch prime time.
He's going to give out to
you. You really grill a person.
Be nice.
You do really grill a person, and I know you do grill them, and that's their job, okay? But sometimes I don't actually say, oh my God, I really feel sorry for them. How do you feel?
No, actually, that is a fair question, but I try. Now, obviously, the ones you watched, I must have been
on form.
I mean, do you know what? I try to be decent to people, but I do challenge people. But I had a boss years ago at the BBC, he said, "Miriam, you can ask someone the toughest question if you ask it with respect." So if there are times when I have not done that, then actually I would be sorry for that, and I shouldn't have done that. But what I try to do is ask very tough questions, but with respect, because people at home don't like you to disrespect interviewees, and I get that. So I try my best to be respectful, but you gotta ask the tough questions. Like, I mean, famously once, and it turned out fine in the end, and I got on very well with them for years after, but there was a famous presidential debate in 2011. It was a nightmare debate, actually, because I was doing it on my own, and there were 7 people, and it was the time Michael D got elected the first time, Sean Gallagher, the world and his mother. There were 7 of them standing in front of me. It was a live show for an hour and a half. 1 million people watched it. I actually thought I was going to die in the middle of it, it was so stressful. So at the end, Dana literally took out a piece of paper and started reading a document, and my boss in my ear, because you know the way you wear an earphone when you're on live TV, he came in my ears from Cork and he goes, sorry about my language, he goes, what the fuck is she talking about? I'm on live television. I'm thinking exactly the same thing, but I can hardly say that. So I just end up saying to Dana, what are you talking about? Blah, blah, blah. So that went on for ages, eventually she stopped. But the most stressful bit of that, talking about a question, was a little earlier. We had decided to ask each candidate a question. You have to take an oath to God to become the President of Ireland. And we thought, Michael D, you always try to find a question that's going to be difficult for one person out of the 7. Each needs a tough question. So he'd often gone on a little bit about he didn't really like that oath, you know, to God. So I thought that would be a difficult question for him. But in fact, they all answered. Then Martin McGuinness, who at the time was the Deputy First Minister of Northern Ireland, I really like Martin, I interviewed him a lot, and I asked him that question, and then he spoke at length about his faith and how he goes to Mass and how it meant a lot to him. And it did mean a lot to him, obviously. But then my head's turning around because I covered the North a lot. And I asked him a question, which he went mad about, and I just said, how do you square your religion? This wasn't a written down question. With just being involved in an organisation on both sides, we know that both sides, of that, you know, was involved in violence for so long. And he went mental with me, so much so, he asked to see me afterwards in my dressing room. I went, oh my God, this was after Dana. So in the end we got on great, he understood, it worked out fine, but sometimes you need to ask tough questions.
Miriam, can I also ask something there, a little bit of insider knowledge, if you like, in relation to that evening. Hoping it's true. I understand that when the request from Mark McGuinness, if you want to call it a request, to have a chat with you afterwards came, it was expressed to me that it was almost like Mark McGuinness following you off set, saying, I need to have a word with you, almost following you towards your dressing room door, producers supporting. But you wanted to be able to speak to Mark on a personal one-to-one level to explain. Was that part, was it important for you to reconnect on a personal level to explain that?
It's like what I was saying, like, I didn't want him to feel like I disrespected him, so I had no problem sitting in the dressing room with him. And we had a nice chat, and you know, he said, and I've spoken about this before, he said, I can't believe you asked me that question. I said, Michael, I've asked you that question loads of times, which I had, you know, and he said, yeah, but my grandson's watching. And I said, and I meant it, and I said, but Martin, aren't you lucky that you are still here and your grandson has you? Because I'm very much a John Hume woman. I, you know, campaigned for John Hume to win Ireland's greatest award, and he was fine, and he got it, and we walked out of the dressing room. The relief on the producer's faces when we walked out, and the shit fake guys all going, oh my God, and we came out fine, and we went the following morning, and we had a lovely day.
But the point being is that if you deal with challenging times on a personal level and personably, it is possible to get over those conflicts.
Totally, I totally respected his perspective. He seemed to respect mine, and we got on great forevermore.
Okay, excellent. Any other questions? There must be somebody in the room. Don't be very quiet. I'm going to put my eyeballs under a little bit. I've got a couple of questions here. Introduce yourself and ask away.
By the way, you just saved John Burke.
Paddy Carlow, car estimate and Amplify, and Miriam, thanks for letting me park your car earlier on.
Thank you for parking my car, Paddy.
But this question is for Bernard. Bernard, we spoke outside about when you write about rugby matches and you have a personal connection with some of these players. Do you have to be conscious of what you're saying? And if you, like Miriam, have to give those tough answers or what the player has said, like how do you feel? Do players actually come back to you to say, Bernard, you shouldn't have said that?
I'm sure they do curse me behind my back, but I'm quite lucky that I end up meeting them quite quickly or regularly, and often when that anger doesn't stew, it never gets too big. And I think as long as I'm fair and I'm saying what I believe, I'm not looking to get clickbait or to get hits because I'm saying things that are outrageous. I'll make lots of mistakes as well. I'll read something wrong. But I get lucky enough, I do a lot of Q&As with Andy Farrell, Johnny Sexton, Dan Sheen, Peter Manny, etc. And you get a chance to tell them why you said what you said and tell them why you doubted them. I'll give you an example. When Andy Farrell got his first to go from Joe Schmidt, the first year performance didn't really improve, and I said on TV, I said, I can't see what Andy Farrell says he's doing play out. And I remember Johnny Sexton, a good friend of mine, rang me, and Johnny would be quite an angry guy and tell you straight, and he goes, you don't fucking know anything, whatever. And I said, oh, so what do you mean? I said, oh, you don't understand the work Andy Farrell is doing. I said, yeah, but we can't see it on the pitch. I said, like, you're privy to it at training. He said, it'll come. And in fairness, he was right. That's the challenge, is that, like Ireland, I was in Chicago with Sky Sports New Zealand, and I did something Andy Farrell the day before the All Blacks match, and he said to me, we are training at 11, we haven't trained that since 2023. So of course, you take his advice, and for the next 24 hours you think, right, I want to beat the All Blacks. And then unfortunately it just doesn't transfer. And that happens. That happens. You can have a great plan, great strategy, business or sport, and for whatever reason the opposition are better, or the market doesn't react to the way you thought. But over time, really good coaches, really good players will find the right secret. So the question is, I would say I get a lot more abuse from fans. So like on Instagram, Twitter, fans will get angry about an article or a podcast or a comment, whereas actual players and coaches who, if they trust you and believe you're just saying it for the right reasons and there's no agenda, they actually understand that's part of the game. But unfortunately fans, if you look at the Sam Prendergast, Jack Crowley debate, we've got two really good 10s. I guarantee you, I'd hope that if both of them walked in here and one stood down there and one stood there, people would go up and shake their hand and love photograph and say, look, I love watching you play. But online all they want to do is abuse one or the other. And unfortunately the lads, so Johnny Sexton said to the lads, as a former 10, turn off your social media. But unfortunately now, if you want to have a deal with Adidas or want to get a car, they actually need to have social media. So if they're sitting at home at night and they're sitting on their couch, people can attack them. Yeah. You know, whereas my generation, you had to go to the pub or a coffee shop or a petrol station. If someone wanted to have a go at you, they could shout at you, and then obviously you could hit them back. Whereas unless you want to get in a war of words on Instagram, so that's why that's hard for them. It's hard for them. But people in general, when they meet those people, will actually be nice to them, which is important and it's nice. But the fact is that idiots can actually abuse them from the pub or from their couch.
It's been a really interesting conversation to listen to, and from my perspective, I think the biggest things that I've learned today is it's about connection. Everything that we do in life is about connections that we've got with our family, connections that we've got with our teammates, the teams behind what we produce, and the community at large. And I think if we can find a way of being connected to people, it makes everything, the moments of joy and the moments of conflict, all more enjoyable and easier to get through. Please give our two guests a massive round of applause. Thank you very, very much. My pleasure. Of course, the guys will be here for those of you who have been maybe a fraction shy about asking questions. You should do Dance with the Stars, Miriam. That's sparkle that you've got jumping off stage, so it would suit you very, very well. But for now, thank you very much, of course, to all of the team at the Chamber for inviting me to be part of today. Thanks to the Woodford Dolmen Hotel for making us so welcome. And Nicola Dorn, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and I just please for me to say a final thank you to everyone who attended and took part. I hope you all enjoyed that session. I've come away with my head exploding with little nuggets that I definitely will try and apply. Can we just give one last incredible round of applause to Brian, to Miriam and Bernard for sharing I also just want to thank again Carlow County Council and the Local Enterprise Office who sponsored today's event, and a huge round of applause also to Colin Duggan and the team here in the hotel. So in a few seconds here we're just going to do some presentations and some photos. So I am going to ask some of the team from Carlow County Council and the Chamber Board to come up with our guests and get some official photos. But before that, I just want to wish you all a happy, peaceful and enjoyable Christmas and a focused, productive and positive 2026. I think that really came out of today's conversation. Positivity is really where it's at. Please remember, as a chamber, our purpose is to support all of you, all of our members, and to be the voice of the business community here in Carlow. So please, during the year, at any point, please do reach out to us if you need assistance, if you want to connect with people, if you have an issue, or even an idea of something you'd like us to do. Come to us, we're very approachable, I promise. Together, we are all stronger. So listen, thank you so much. Have a lovely day. Have a little bit more networking. Take some photos. Be sure to tag us in them. And thank you again.